Hello guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another of my videos. So today I'm going to give you guys the best Bloodline tier list of Shindo Life. Now if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment for more. Also, if you guys enjoyed this tier list, be sure to leave a like on the video, guys. I mean it when I say this. There's going to be a bunch of salty people when I did not rank something exactly the way they wanted. So be sure to leave a like on the video. It will help out the channel a ton, guys. I really do mean it. Alright, so before I start this tier list, I'm going to go based off of RPG and competitive, guys. And Arena X. That's what these are actually going to be based off of. So for Akuma, I'm going to be putting it in good. It's going to be the same as my previous. It actually got nerfed. The Threadblade glitch actually got nerfed, so it's going to be a lot lower on the good list. But the Susanoo actually kind of carries it. The Susanoo adds extra damage to M1s, and it's just overall a pretty decent bloodline. Next up is going to be Golden Jokei. Golden Jokei, as always, is going to go into broken. They actually had a bug with air palms recently, but they actually fixed it. Air palms for a second was actually Jokei's palms, and that would have actually made this down to good. I'm not lying, guys. But air palms is back to the way it was before, so now it's going to be back and broken, guys. It does a ton of damage. Next up is going to be Ashes Storm. Ashes Storm is going to go into really good. It does a lot of damage. It got nerfed a while ago, but it still does a ton of damage. But I don't really see it around that much, but it still is a very good KG to use in battles. Next up is going to be Azarashi. Azarashi is going to be below Akuma on good. Now, the only reason for this is because I feel like Azarashi's mode is the only thing that carries the KG, and just being a mode, it's not going to help you in Arena X and competitive very much because you don't have mode at the start of the fight. So, being based off of that, I'm going to be putting it at the bottom of good. Next up is going to be a Zim Senko. A Zim Senko I'm going to be putting at the top of good. Now, the reason for this is because it actually did get nerfed. The stun time is a lot less than it used to be, but it still is a very good KG to use. You go Speedy Boy when you use it as well. It's just overall a very decent KG to use, but the nerf kind of hit it really hard where it was the best. Next up is going to be Bankai Akuma. Now, Bankai Akuma is going to be below Goto Jokei on Broken. It still has the Bankai MD glitch. If you guys don't know what that is, go check out my video on it. I did upload that. Also, the third ability of it is pretty decent. It does like 50k. If you have like 3 people in a group, it does 150k. The second move of it is pretty decent. It's one of the best stuns in the entire game. And the first move is an auto dodge. You guys already know what an auto dodge is. Very good, very overpowered. It is very long as well. Next up is going to be Black Shock. Black Shock is going to be at the bottom of good. Now, the reason for this is because the end lag on the Z-Spec kind of carries Black Shock. But until it gets the same changes that Storm got, it will not be higher on the tier list. But once it does, it will be much higher, guys. Next up is going to be Bolt. I'm going to be putting Bolt at the bottom of good. Now, the reason for this is because I put it in Meh before, and I realized now that that was not the truth. That was not the actual case for Bolt. Bolt is actually a very decent KG in the game. It's just that nobody uses it, which is why I put it in Meh before. But it is still a very decent KG. It does have stuns. It is just okay to use, and it can be put in element slots now. Next up is going to be Bubble. Bubble, I'm going to be putting at the top of really good. Now, as I said before, Bubble is so close to being broken, guys. They removed a ton of hand signs on Bubble. It is just extremely good to use, guys, now. And they also reworked the third ability. Once they removed the end lag on the third ability, it would probably be a broken KG, guys. Next up is going to be Clay. Clay's going to be at the bottom of really good. Now, this is one of the most surprising tiers, but the Clay rework actually made it insanely overpowered. It is one of the least draining MD modes out of the entire game, and you do get stats, and you can fly around and things like that. And it has a ton of iframes now with its abilities. So because of that, Clay's going to be at the bottom of really good. It moved up from the tier list from bad before, guys. I put it in bad before, and now it's at really good. Next up is to be Crystal. Crystal I'm going to be putting in Meh. Now, the reason for this is because the first ability, Crystal, is the only good move of Crystal. The other ones are just stuns, and they're not very good stuns at that. Next up is going to be Dong, and Dong I'm going to be putting in really good at the bottom. Now, the reason for this is because the third ability and the first ability are very good, but the auto dodge and the mode leave much to be desired. The third ability is probably the best move of Dong. It is extremely easy to hit, and it is a stun. It does a decent amount of damage too, and also is on an extremely low cooldown. Next up is going to be Dio Senko. Dio Senko is going to be at the top of really good. Now, the reason for this, because I do not believe it's broken, guys. I don't think Dio Senko is broken, but the time stop ability is very good, and it was even better before they added the sound notification to it. Also, the auto dodge of it lasts just as long as Bankai's, and that makes it extremely overpowered, and the abilities are just good to use in general. Next up is going to be Explosion. Explosion I'm going to be putting at the top of Meh. The reason for this is because it has instant casting abilities, I'm pretty sure. No, actually, that got changed. They added hand sides to it, but it's still going to be at the top of Meh. It used to be extremely good. It probably was at the bottom of really good before it actually got nerfed, but that was my mistake because I didn't use Explosion much before that, and I blame that on me, guys. But right now, Explosion is not good anymore because they nerfed it very hard. Next up is going to be Forged Akuma. Forged Akuma is going to be at the top of really good. This is very obvious. Forged Akuma is one of the best Akumas in the entire game. It has a ton of stuns. Its entire kit is basically stuns. and that's just extremely good. There's a reason why everyone that uses Forge gets called a Forge spammer, because nobody likes facing it because of the amount of stuns it has. Next up is going to be Frostfire. Frostfire is going to be at the bottom of mana. The reason for this is because Frostfire is a very decent KG for countering combos, but there's just much better you can use to counter combos such as auto dodges and actual counters, and the move of it is just not very good. I opened my eyes to it, and I'm just going to be putting it at the bottom of men now. Next up is to be Gold Stand. Gold Stand is going to be at the bottom of meta. The reason for this is because the first move is now actually a block break, and that is the only reason that it's going to be at the bottom of meta. Otherwise, it would be in bad. Next up is going to be Wanziyame. Now, Wanziyame is actually going to be at the bottom of really good. This actually got moved up in the tier list from Rel's changes. It is now very good, guys. You guys need to check it out. Its abilities are now extremely overpowered. And the stun of it now does more damage. It is actually a stun now. It's absolutely insane, guys. Check it out. I'm being serious. Next up is going to be Ice. Ice is going to be at the complete bottom of meta. The first ability of it is the only good ability of Ice, but you can make it good and useful in combos for infinite combos and stuff like that. Next up is going to be Ink. Ink's going to actually be at the top of meta. The reason for this is because Ink is not very good as a KG, but I do feel like it is just decent in general. The extended M1s kind of carries it, but I really hope they buff Ink in the future because it's just a very cool Keka Genkai, but they just need to buff it. Next up is to be Apollo Sand. Apollo Sand is going to be at the top of good. Now, the reason for this is because Apollo Sand's mode has the best M1s out of almost any mode in the entire game. And whenever you Threadblade and use the G spec, the heavy attack will actually go through, and then you get an extra M1. Also, the C spec of it is extremely good. It does a very good amount of damage, and it does stun. The first ability of it is a very good stun. It does tons of damage. Second ability is a very good stun. Third ability is probably the weakest one of it, which is very rare in a KG. Usually the third ability is the best one. But for Apollo Sand, it's just a very overall good KG, and I have actually used it more recently, which is why it is now very high in the tier list. Next up is going to be Eternal. Eternal, in my opinion, is going to be in really good, below Dio Senko and above Bubble. Now, the reason for this is because it is extremely good for combos, and that's about it, guys. The counter of it is very meh. It's very decent, and the last ability of it is very good for healing and extending fights. But the only reason it's this high in the tier list is because it's very good for combos. Next up is going to be Jokei. Jokei is going to be in good, below Akuma, above Azarashi. Now, the reason for this is not just because Golden Jokei is exists in the game, but Jokei, I feel like it doesn't do enough damage to be warranted as a damage-only KG, which is what Golden Jokei does. Golden Jokei basically does twice as much damage as Jokei itself. So that's pretty much the reason why it's in good, is because it just doesn't do that much damage. Next up is to be Kokatsu. Now, Kokatsu I'm going to be putting in bad, guys. I feel like it needs to get reworked. It's very slow KG. It cannot keep its own in fights. There's a reason why nobody uses it unless it's an ability arena. And yeah, it's a very slow KG. It just needs a rework, guys. Next up is going to be Kaijin. Kaijin is actually going to be in good, above Senko and below Apollo Sand. Now, the reason for this is because the first move got reworked and is now a stun. So that is actually very, very cool. But the C spec of it, the monkey, is still kind of bad. But it's just a very unique and good KG to use overall. Next up is to be Karada. Karada is going to be in bad at the very bottom. Now, the reason for this is because I feel like it's, as I said with Kokatsu, it's a very slow KG. They need to rework Karada and make it better, or just rework the abilities entirely. I feel like it does not make sense that much with the moveset. I feel like they could do much better with this KG, which is why it's going to be in bad. Next up is to be Konichi. Konichi is actually going to be below Goto Jokei and above Bankai. And the reason for this is because Konichi actually got nerfed, guys, if you did not know this. It got a huge nerf recently where its moves do not last nearly as long anymore. So it's extremely hard to hit a lot of the abilities, guys. I'm being serious. It is very hard to hit some of the abilities sometimes now, just because the amount of time that they go on for actually got reduced. Next up is to be Dokay. Now, Dokay is one of the saddest moments in Shindo Life. It wasn't really good now. I'm going to be putting it at the bottom of good now. It actually did get nerfed recently, guys. The C spec does not last for as long now, and the Q spec, not the Q spec, the first ability of it does not last nearly as long now. So that is a very sad moment in Shindo Life. They shouldn't have nerfed this KG. I feel like that was just unwarranted and unneeded. Next up is to be Concho. Now, Concho is going to be in really good, below Bubble, above Ashen Storm, because it does a ton of damage, and it also drains chi. It's just not nearly as overpowered as it used to be, but it still is extremely useful for the specific aspect of draining their entire chi bar. It just doesn't do as much damage as it used to. Next up is going to be Lava. Lava's going to be at the bottom of bad. There's not much to say about it. It's an AoE-based bloodline. Does barely any damage. Isn't even good against bosses anymore. It's bad. Yeah, that's it. Next up is going to be Minikami. Minikami is going to be at the bottom of really good. Now, the reason for this is because the puppet bombs are actually very, very good for dealing damage. The poison was fixed recently, but I just feel like it's a very underwhelming KG. Everyone hyped up the rework, hyped it up, and they're not even using it in CC, guys. But Minikami is just an okay KG overall to use in the game, which is why it's going to be really good. Next up is going to be Mud. I hate Mud. I feel like it's very bad. The first ability of it is decent, but not good enough to move it to Meh, guys. Next up is going to be Nature. Now, Nature, guys, Nature, I'm going to be putting below Azarashi, above Blackshock, and good. Nature actually surprised me. I've been using it recently, guys, and Nature is actually insane. It does actually a lot of damage, a lot more than you guys would expect from a common KG. And the stun on it is actually very long. It's a really good stun, guys. If you guys have not used Nature, you guys need to really check it out. Next up would be Nectar. Now, Nectar actually got a buff recently, so it's going to be at the top of Men. Now, the third ability of it now does multiple hits, which is extremely important for Nectar, guys. That makes Nectar actually really good, guys. Check out Nectar's third ability if you guys haven't already. Next up is going to be Okami. Now, Okami, I'm going to be putting in bad at the top. I feel like it is a very damage-oriented KG, and the puppy does not carry it, guys. I'm sorry, the puppy does not carry it. But it is a damage-oriented KG that does not do damage. That's just weird, right? Next up is going to be Paper. Paper I'm going to be putting in Meh, above Ink, and below Nectar. Paper, as I said before, is a very damage-oriented KG, but it's just getting outclassed by all of the other damage KGs in the game right now. It needs a buff to the to some of the abilities to maintain its place in Shindo Life. I feel like the Z-spec of it, if they reduce the mode to 10 per second like they did to Clay, it would actually be a very good KG to use. Next up, it would be Atomic. Atomic is actually going to be at the top of Meh. Now, the reason for this is because Atomic is very, very useful in combos, guys. Extremely useful. And Atomic is very, very useful in combos because of the amount of damage it does, and it can be used in your elemental bar. Next up is going to be Ryan Akuma. Ryan Akuma is actually going to be below Forged and above Dios Echo. The reason for this is because Sasano is very good for Ryan. The third ability actually gives you iframes, which is extremely good. And it has a counter in it, which is very good overall. However, the Chidori of it is not very good, but I did make a combo video over it, and they were very decent combos overall. Next up is going to be Rengoku. Now, Rengoku, in my opinion, is going to be in really good below Ryan and above Dios Echo. Now, the reason for this is because the Almighty Push is very, very useful now. But now Almighty Pull is just not good compared to Ryan's Pull, but Almighty Pull could still be used in place of Ryan's Pull. But Almighty Push kind of carries the KG right now because Almighty Push actually still breaks blocks, which is extremely insane for it being an AoE ability that is extremely easy to hit. All you need to do is Shock Slam in, Almighty Push, block broken, guys. Next up would be Renshiki. Now, I feel like I was a little harsh on Renshiki before. I feel like Renshiki is pretty decent as a KG. It just needs a damage buff, guys. That's my personal opinion over it. I feel like it does not do nearly enough damage. Next up is to be Riser Akuma. Now, Riser Akuma is actually going to be above Konichi, below Gono Joke. Now, the reason for this, guys, the reason why Riser Akuma is probably going to be the highest Akuma on this list is because the third ability gives you iframes. The second ability is a decent stun that teleports you to them. The first ability is an auto dodge that you can use abilities during when you're not supposed to be able to do that. And the last proc of the auto dodge actually stuns people, guys. Also, the C-spec of it is absolutely ridiculous. Drains almost half their MD bar, which is absolutely insane. And it does give you the stats of a normal Akuma. It's just really good KG, guys. Next up is going to be Raikishizu. Raikishizu is actually going to be above Rengoku, below Ryan. Now, the reason for this is because of the second mode of Raikishizu is actually very good for combos overall. And the stun of Raikishizu is very good, guys. The first ability is extremely good, and the second ability was actually removed off the global cooldown, which is extremely important for Schism and Raikishizu, and we'll get to Schism later, guys. Next up is to be Sabre. Now, Sabres are going to be at the bottom, not at the bottom, above Wanziyame, below Dangan. Now, the reason for this is because it is extremely good for 1v1s, but that is it, guys. It is terrible for anything other than 1v1s. There's not much else to say about it. It can be used in a lot of combos, M1 combos, stuff like that, but it's just terrible for team fights. Next up is going to be Sand. Now, Sand, in my opinion, is going to be below Kaijin. Below Azarashi, above Nature. And the reason for this is because Sand's only good move is the stun, but the stun is so ridiculous that it kind of warrants Sand being good. And also, Sand's Z-spec is actually auto dodge, if you guys did not know that. Next up is going to be Satori Kumino. Satori Kumino is going to be at the top and really good. Now, the reason for this is very obvious, guys. The weapon spec of it is very good, but it did get nerfed, so it does like half damage now. But the third ability of it is still a very, very good stun, guys. It is still good to use, and the C-spec of it is just good to trick people. And the counter and the auto dodge for it are just extremely good, especially the auto dodge. It actually summons clones, if you guys didn't know that, and it's extremely useful to use in fights in general, guys. The clones can actually break block if you didn't know that. Next up is to be Scorch. Now, Scorch is going to be at the top of bad, and the reason for this is because it's kind of a passive ability, but it's just a waste of a KG slot, guys. Next up is to be Station. Now, Station I'm going to be putting in really good, above Sabre, below Dog. Now, the reason for this is because Station, if you guys didn't know, actually got a buff recently, where Station actually has a lot less hand sign, so it's extremely easy to hit the moves. Now, the C-spec of it is still terrible. They need to remove the end lag off the C-spec, and it actually will be good after that. Like, it would probably be near broken after that, but for now, it's going to be at the bottom of really good. Next up would be Sengoku. Now, Sengoku, I was a little harsh on it before, but I will stick to my point of it being worse than worse than Eternal, but better than Bubble. Now, the reason for this is because the stun is still decent. You know, sometimes you can catch noobs off guard with it. Usually noobs are the ones that struggle with fighting Sengoku anyways. But Sengoku's just kind of bad now. I feel like Rail needs to make changes to it, or they need to just reduce the rarity. That's just my personal opinion of it. The stun is just terrible, which was its only good move. Next up is going to be Senko. Now, Senko, in my opinion, is going to be in good, below Azuma Senko, above Akuma. Now, the reason for this is because it actually is a Z-spec, and it can be equipped to the elemental slots, which is extremely good, especially because Azuma Senko is very good for getting around in general, guys. Next up is going to be Shadow. Now, Shadow is actually going to be in good, below Nature, and above Black Shock. Now, the reason for this is because it actually is extremely good for stunning, but it used to be a lot better than it is now, guys. The stun actually got nerfed, if you guys did not know that. The stun actually did get nerfed, but other than that, it is still very decent. Next up would be Shindai. Shindai is going to be at the bottom of broken. Now, the reason for this is because the auto dodge clones actually got nerfed again. If you guys didn't know, they did get nerfed. They do a lot less damage now. And the C-spec is still the same. The Meteor is still the same. The Genjutsu is still the same. I feel like Shindai is still very overhyped as a bloodline. It is a noob killer. It's kind of the same thing as Sengoku. It is a noob killer bloodline. It is really, really good to use against noobs. But against people that know what they're doing, you might actually get crushed using Shindai. But Shindai, it's just an overall broken KG in the game, and I don't think anything's going to fix that because of the clones. Next up is going to be Schism. Now, Schism is actually going to be above Raikön, guys. Please let me explain. The second ability of it and the first ability of it. The first ability of it was the only thing that made it different from Raikön Schism, but Raikön Schism actually does more damage than Schism, but now Schism is actually better for stunning overall. Next up is going to be Sound. Sound's going to be at the bottom of good. It does a ton of damage, guys. It does not do as much damage as the other damage-oriented bloodlines, which is why it is this low. But it's still a very good KG to use overall. Next up is going to be Steam. Now, Steam is going to be at the top of meta. The reason for this is because it's extremely good to use in combos, and the Steam Dash is just very nice. However, Inferno Dash is just a better Steam Dash. Next up is going to be Storm. Storm's actually going to be below Kaijin, above Zimsek, because the C-spec of it is now, it's pretty good, guys. And the second ability of it had the end lag removed, so that's why it's actually this high in the list. It's extremely good KG to use, and they made it good just for CC, basically. Next up would be Tengoku. Now, Tengoku, in my opinion, I don't know. Like, I feel like while fighting it, I feel like Tengoku moved down from broken to being really good because it's kind of getting overshadowed by a lot of the other KGs. But the C-spec of it, nothing changed from Tengoku, guys. I just feel like Tengoku, it's extremely damage oriented. It's probably the most damage oriented bloodline in the entire game. It has like no CC at all. I don't know. I just feel like it's been getting overshadowed recently. Next up to be Glacier. Glacier is actually going to be below Richiki, above Sound, on good. Now, the reason for this is because the third ability of it is very decent, guys. But the other abilities of it are kind of trash, including the mode spec. Next up to be Inferno. Now, Inferno, in my opinion, is going to be at the bottom really good. Now, the reason for this is because I feel like it is above average in terms of use because of the amount of mobility that you can get from it. That's the main reason why it's in really good. Next up is going to be my good old buddy pal, Ryan Rengoku. Now, Ryan Rengoku is actually going to be at the bottom of broken. Now, the reason for this is because Ryan Rengoku actually got a big nerf recently where it had hand signs added to the last move. Also, it had hand signs added to the first move, and overall, it just got nerfed, big nerf, but it's still broken in this game. I feel like the iframes you get from the first ability and the second ability carry the KG very, very hard. And the third ability is just the cherry on top. It's a stun, not in the global cooldown, that messes with people's heads. Next up is going to be Vine. Now, Vine was broken, guys. It was broken. You guys are not going to believe this, but I'm actually going to be putting it below Raikishi's and above Rengoku on really good now. Now, it only summons 2 Vine clones instead of 5, guys. That is more than 50% of the clones removed entirely. They didn't even just nerf the damage. They removed clones. 3 of them. Now there's only 2 left. That's insane, dude. That is absolutely insane. And now it is not nearly as broken as it used to be, guys. But the auto dodge is still very, very good for Vine, but I do not ever recommend using the C-spec or the mode. I mean, the C-spec or the first ability, because it does reduce the amount of damage you deal to them. Next up is going to be Hair. Now, Hair is going to be at the top of broken. Now, the reason for this is because if you have really good aim, Hair is the most broken KG in the entire game. Without a doubt, Hair is the most broken KG in the entire game if you guys have good aim. The second ability is not in a global cooldown, and it is a water prison stun, which is one of the longest in the entire game. And the hair C spec is absolutely ridiculous, even though it got nerfed recently. But the main thing about the hair C spec wasn't the damage, it was how long it lasted. So I feel like hair at the moment is probably one of the most broken, if not the most broken KG in the entire game. Next up, it would be Light Jokei. Now, Light Jokei, some of you guys might get mad at me for this, some of you might not. Below Vine, above Rengoku. Now, the reason for this is because Light Jokei is so undeserving of 1 out of 200. It is unreal, but it's still decent. I could see people winning fights with it. It was such a disappointment, guys. And you guys cannot lie when you saw Light Jokei. You're like, this was the biggest disappointment. This was even more disappointing than Mecha Tailed. Next up to be the big boy Mecha Spirit. Now, Mecha Spirit, in my opinion, is actually going to be above Light Jokei and below Vine. Now, the reason for this is because Mecha Spirit is actually very trash. It's very bad KG, but at the same time, it is extremely good if you're actually good with it. The third ability actually got a big buff recently. Now it has only 2 hand signs when it had 5 before. That is a very extreme change because the third ability of it does like 50, 60k damage, and now it's only in 2 hand signs, and you could actually break block by going behind someone while using it. But the main downside of this not being, the only reason why this actually isn't in broken is because you need the mode to use any of the abilities. Next up is going to be God Sabre. God Sabre is going to be at the top of broken, guys. I feel like God Sabre is the most broken KG in the game right now. The first move of it, block breaks. Oh, no, my bad. The first move of it is an auto dodge, guys. It is an auto dodge iframe that does a ton of damage, guys. If you hold the button down, it does an absolute metric ton of damage. And the second ability of it teleports you and block breaks. That is absolutely insane. And the third ability of it actually summons clones that stun and stay there. The clones will actually stay there, guys. It is absolutely insane. And the C spec of it is another stun, if you guys weren't convinced already. And the weapon spec of it, guess, guys, guess, is the best thing about Sabre. The C spec of the mode is the weapon spec of it. So that is absolutely insane, guys. Anyways, guys, it's going to actually be for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment for more, and hopefully see you in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.